Hey D, so it was a good match. I know we were talking to each other during the match on Messenger and going back and forth. It was really early for you, 3 a.m. So how did it feel like waking up at 3 a.m. and watching Novak at a final? Is this the earliest you watched him at a final, or have you done this before?
I've done this before for Australian Opens, obviously. This is the time that I usually wake up. I have to wake up to watch an Australian Open matches. So again, I've done it before, and some early mornings are fully worth it, right? So that was fully worth it. Waking up at 3:30 a.m. to watch that match and to watch him win.
Yeah, I mean, and he didn't disappoint, no? I mean, it was a good match. It was quite comprehensive in the end. I mean, okay, if you look at the scoreline, Tsitsipas did take it. I mean, I think it was 2 tiebreakers in the last 2 sets, right? Was it?
That's right. I think in the second set is probably where Tsitsipas tried to change things up and sort of try to drag it to hopefully a 4th one if he could.
That's right.
And ultimately, I think for Tsitsipas, I think his forehand and his first serves escaped him. Didn't sort of quite come together for him on that day. So to be honest, I did think that you and I, we chatted before the match, and I thought it might go to 4 sets. You said it'll go to 3 sets. You were absolutely right.
Well, to be fair to you, you were right with the women's game. You were for Sabalenka, and Sabalenka won. I went for Rybakina. So we are like even, 1-for-1 kind of.
That's right. But I did think that maybe Tsitsipas could have taken a set off of Djokovic that day. But like I said before, I think sort of a lot of things in his game didn't come through for him on that day, and he wasn't able to capitalize on certain opportunities that presented itself in the second set. Ultimately, Djokovic was too good.
Yeah, I mean, like, see, that's the thing, like, even when I said 3 sets when we spoke earlier in the pre-match thing, I think even you were also a little bit surprised, and I'm sure a lot of people were surprised. And I mean, it was wishful thinking, but I kind of knew it because, I mean, I know all these guys like Tsitsipas, Berrettini, Rublev and Zverev and all these guys. They're good players, but they just don't come up to the standard of Djokovic. And maybe a couple of years ago, but right now, like I watched him right throughout the French, and I think he played for the Adelaide Open as well. And the way he's playing, he seems so driven, and he's a man on a mission. And I remember I told you that I think he has something to prove, to show that he can still, kick it with the young guys out there and just, show them who's boss. And, he did. I mean, he made Tsitsipas look pretty ordinary, I mean, some of those points, I mean, yeah, they were good, but I mean, Djokovic was in a different stratosphere, I mean, when you look at it.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's sort of the key. He did make Tsitsipas look ordinary, and that's sort of the key that day, I don't know. I don't know if there was some nerves there for Tsitsipas or why
may have been.
His forehand didn't. But I did expect a tougher battle from his end. But you're right. Djokovic is he was on fire. He's been on fire since the Adelaide Open. I did watch the Adelaide Open. And just up until his hamstring tear, he was, playing remarkably well. And then he did have the bump in the road with the hamstring tear, which resolved itself thankfully. But he's pretty much been looking very unbeatable from the time he set foot in Australia. Yeah. He keeps saying it repeatedly. That is his most preferred condition. Rod Laver night session in that arena is his most preferred, stadium with the place to play. Right. I saw somewhere something that was quite funny. Not funny, but I would say I read something that was quite pointed. Is that it is Rod Laver's arena, but Djokovic's home court. So I think that's it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, Rod Laver was right there watching him as well. But, okay, so 2 quick questions. Dia, I know you had to rush off because you've got very important things to do. But I just want to ask you 2 quick questions. The first one being, because you've been following Djokovic for more than even I've been following him. I've loved tennis all my life, and I've been watching tennis a lot, but I've only started like religiously watching it in the last couple of years or so. But you've been watching Djokovic and following his exploits for so many years. So at the end of that match yesterday, he got, not yesterday, a couple of days ago actually, he got very emotional. And, he ran up to his stand and he was sobbing. You could hear him sobbing, right? And then even after that, he went back to his chair and he was crying there as well. Yes, he's been through so much stuff in the last couple of years with being exiled from Australia, being exiled from America, and so on. Maybe, would you think that was it? Or what do you think was going through his mind that, that brought out so much emotion when he won the Aussie Open this time?
I think, as he pointed out, I think it was a release for him. I think he was holding in a lot of emotions. There was a lot of things, but there's a lot went on in the past 4 to 5 weeks for him. Returning to Australia after a deportation, he would have been facing 3 years, right? And he didn't know if he was coming back to Australia till very late into the year last year. So relief from that. Then his hamstring injury. So he came with obviously huge motivation and huge goal in mind, which is to win the Aussie Open. And at the Adelaide Open, when he had this tear in the hamstring, it might have felt for him that it wasn't possible, that he might have to pull out of the tournament. So that sort of was something that was, I'm sure weighing him down. And thirdly, the dad's, scenario with the Russian supporters, etc., which sort of came at a very inopportune moment. It was a couple of days before the finals, just before his semifinals. So very, very bad timing there. All of this weighing him down. And I think that despite all of that, he held his emotions until that very last moment, that very last match point. And then it all sort of flooded, for him. That's how I felt it. And you're right, I've been following this guy for as long as he's been playing professional tennis. I have never seen him this emotional after a match win. The most emotional I had seen prior to this was when he lost to Medvedev in 2021, I believe, when he was going for his career Grand Slam and he didn't win the US Open that day. But even then, there was sobbing, but not to this extent. So this is the most emotional I've seen in the guy. So you can actually sense how much he had been holding within to sob like this and to hold on to his mother like that and to sob in that manner. Like it was a first for me that I've never seen that before. It was also very touching. It's very touching for me, that the human side of him, like when he's on court doing what he does, he seems invincible, a superhero type, and then you see this side of him where he lets out his emotions, and you see it reminds you, he's actually human,
Yeah. I think maybe there was a side of him that also was quite sad that his dad wasn't there, wasn't he? I think he wasn't there at the finals, right? So I think that also may have got to him a little bit, and at the end of the day, I think he was just relieved, like you say, and it was a great match, and he really proved himself. And, I think, like you said previously in our previous chat, there's no doubt now that he is definitely the all-time greatest tennis player that has ever lived. Well, at least to this point anyway. Nadal might have something to say about it, but let's see what happens. Okay, so the next... The next sorry.
Goran Ivanisovic's interview.
Oh, he's so cute, Goran. I love him.
He said any other player would have pulled out of a tournament when he had the MRI results.
Yes, that's
but
right.
He didn't. Craig Tilly said the same thing. So Djokovic I think he came with with one goal in mind to Australia, and I think as soon as he realized it, that's when all the... Yeah, and I'm sure he missed his dad as well. He mentioned something about seeing the dad on his way on the walk to the interview post-match, and that his dad was quite sad. So yeah, I'm sure all of that. It's a lot of emotions, right?
Right. Yeah. Also, I also have to say, like you said, you've been watching Novak for much longer than I have. And, I know his English has been good, but there was a time when he couldn't properly articulate himself, at the start, I guess, because, obviously he's from Serbia, but he really speaks really well now, doesn't he? Like, I don't know, maybe you're probably thinking, okay, he's been for a while, but like he's really mastered the art of winning people over. I think, like, I love how he always compliments people and he makes people feel special in, when he was giving that long speech after the trophy presentation, he was so gracious, and he spoke such nice things about City Pass as well. I mean, it must have been really bad for Stefanos, because I think Stefanos knew he was just outplayed on all angles. So it must have been hard for him to stand there and wait. But I mean, Novak really tried his best to make him feel good. And I just see the marks and the signs of a true champion, and he's really worked on that aspect of his game. Like, and he cracks a joke every now and again, even in his post-match interviews with the press. It's always lots of fun. He's quite witty. He cracks a joke or two. And I think he's really mastered the whole PR angle. Although he is painted as the villain, I think he's kind of the guy that the press also loves to hate, isn't he?
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. This guy, he's really worked on a lot of aspects of his life, and language is one done. He didn't always speak this well, so he's markedly improved in that. He's also a guy who can speak multiple languages. I believe he speaks about 5 or 6 languages, including French, Italian. I believe he's also studying Mandarin. So he's constantly, trying to sort of improve those aspects of his life. He's always been a joker. That's why he's called the Joker off court. But then he stopped doing that because he was painted in bad light for doing that as well. Yeah. But, he's got a great sense of humor. You see that off court. You see in the interviews, etc. And yes, I mean, I think it is expected of players in that, of that caliber to actually always be gracious and to say the right things. And in that respect, I think Tsitsipas also was remarkable in what he said. I thought it was that Tsitsipas's speech was excellent. That he took the time to thank people like Djokovic and Nadal and Federer, who have pushed them as players to be where they are today, which is exactly what it is. These younger players have to really work much harder to get to a certain level if they're to win Grand Slams. As long as these 3 guys are around, or now it's 2, but that's what it is. The threshold or the level that they have created for the younger guys, pushes them much more and makes them better players. And that was very beautiful on part of Tsitsipas to say things like that as well. And also to acknowledge that he's probably the greatest who have ever held the racket, which
he had to say that. I'm sure he meant it, but I mean, the way Djokovic won, like, it was almost like an invincible way. So I think Tsitsipas, came out of it thinking, gosh, what just happened? Like, I went into this match so ready. Tsitsipas had a couple of good matches leading up to this, and he probably did feel that he has a really good chance, and he was kind of like shell-shocked. I remember when we were talking over Messenger while the match was going on, you said Tsitsipas seems starstruck, remember? Because he did seem like he was, not ready for this, what was coming at him from the other side. Okay, Deep, very quickly now, Novak's won it. Brilliant. Okay, his 10th Aussie Open title. He's obviously brilliant with all of this. Now we had to look at going forward what happens. I think it's the French Open that's next, so he's eligible to compete in France. So at Roland Garros, that won't be an issue. But I think the real issue will become the US Open and Indian Wells and so on and so forth. So there's still a bit of a question mark whether he will be let into the US. But I think there's such a hypocrisy going on. I mean, I don't want to get very political about this, but like, I was watching a couple of news panel discussions about Djokovic online, and like, what a lot of people are saying is, there are so many illegal immigrants crossing over the southern border, who are not checked for vaccination. There are no background checks being done, and they are being welcomed into the country, and they are even being given free accommodation in hotels in New York and so on and so forth. But this man is probably the best player to ever play tennis, is not being let into the country. I mean, don't you think that's a bit of a hypocrisy there?
Yeah, I mean, John McEnroe, I think, is very vocal about it. Many times has said this guy should be allowed to play there. Should have been allowed to play last year, should be allowed to play here. Now, And this is subject to correction, but I thought I saw 2 articles circulating on Facebook and other social media about him having been granted the green light to play in the US Open this year. However, he's not able to play Indian Wells and Miami because I think the ban is being lifted at the end of May, and these 2 tournaments are coming before May.
Right.
So I need to read up more about it, but what I saw there today sort of floating around is that he might most likely be playing the US Open this year.
Right.
But he likes to go to the Indian Wells in Miami before that. That I think seems to be out of the question for him.
Yeah.
But I think his next stop I believe is in Dubai.
Yes.
So that's something to look forward to. And the clay court season starts and the lead up to that, and hopefully, he'll be able to. I'm hoping that he would give it another shot at the Career Grand Slam this year.
Oh yeah, why not? I mean, he's playing well enough to do that. Let's see. I mean, Nadal who's probably kind of in the twilight now, would probably love to retire at Roland Garros with another French Open title. Whether he can do that, I don't know. There are lots of clay court players, even amongst the younger group of players, who are quite good on that surface. Djokovic also very good on that. He hasn't had as much success as he has had on the hard courts of in Melbourne, but still, you never know. So let's see, lot to play for, lot to look forward to. Let's hope Novak is given the green light to play in the US as well, because then your hope for him just might happen. Dee, thank you so much for joining me and having these little chats right throughout the Aussie Open. Okay, so we'll talk again. I mean, there's lots of tennis coming up in 2023. All right, so take care. Yes. And it's always good to have you on the other side chatting about this stuff, because you are such a font of information, especially when it comes to Novak Djokovic. Okay, so take care. Talk soon.
Thanks so much, Anil. Take care.
Bye.